In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Stephen Meadows, a COO of a top real estate brokerage in the DC metro area that does over 1,800 transactions a year. Stephen is going to talk about how to acquire a real estate team or brokerage or how to merge with a real estate team or brokerage. He's going to talk about the importance of knowing the direction you want to take your real estate team or brokerage in terms of how you want to exit the business and how you could properly value your company today if you do think that this is the right time for selling. Hey, what's up, you guys? Jeff Cohn here with another episode of the Team Building Podcast, where we interview top team leaders, broker owners, and thought leaders from across the country. Have a great guest today in Mr. Stephen Meadows. Stephen's hailing from the DC metro area and is the COO of a huge, successful real estate brokerage in the area. I'm most excited today to have him on the show to talk about how to increase our value if we choose to sell, exit the business altogether, or do a merger. And Stephen is one of the foremost experts in the country on this topic. Stephen, welcome to the Team Building Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Well, brag yourself up, man. I know you guys do huge numbers. You've been working in this space for quite some time. And I actually got to know Stephen over the last couple of years. We've connected at the Housing Wires gathering. It was the Gathering of Eagles. Now they're calling it The Gathering. And we've hung out a lot there. He's such a great person, just personally and professionally. He was one of the only people out on the dance floor, getting everybody else to come on out just a couple weeks ago in Scottsdale, Arizona at the JW. But on a professional note, Stephen, why don't you talk a little bit about where you came from and where you are now, and then where you're going?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the business for a little over 22 years, going on 23 years. I started as an admin at a real estate company in my hometown after selling a stereo to the broker at Big Lots.
No way. What was the hometown, just so the audience knows?
Three Rivers, Michigan.
Okay.
So if you're from Michigan, I'm from Southwest. It's not Detroit, basically. But I always like to share my origin because I love to tell agents, like, it doesn't really matter what your background is. Real estate is so multifaceted. You can do anything you want if you work hard enough. So I worked my way up from front desk admin to top producing REO broker in Nashville. And then I've done just a bunch of different things. I've touched a lot of real estate, but what I did, kind of the best career move I made, was I worked for the national franchise of Coldwell Banker. And that gave me exposure to so much of the industry, hundreds of brokerages. I was franchise sales director for a time in the Midwest. And then I was picked up by a brokerage in Virginia. At the time, this is right before COVID, at the time he had 5 offices, about 75 agents in the Shenandoah Valley and Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia and Virginia. So if you know that area, it's beautiful. But he said, I need to grow. Come work for me. I said, okay, sure, I'll do it. And
what year was this?
This was 2020.
Oh, so, okay. Wow, right before the crazy.
I worked for him for 5 weeks before the pandemic shut us down. That was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I was brought on as VP of operations. I was running the company from Ohio, where I lived at the time. So that slowed our growth plan a little bit. But then we hit the ground running at the beginning of 22, and we did 5 acquisitions in the year 22.
Wow.
And then we did a 6th one in 23. And so that ballooned us.
Wow. We're seeing a ton of that right now. We'll get into that here in a little bit.
Oh, yeah. That was just the beginning. And we probably, if I'm being honest, we probably paid more than we definitely paid more than we would have a year later.
Mm-hmm.
Because we bought these companies at the height of their success. Everybody had a great year in 22.
Yep.
But we knew the bubble was coming in the market. So we bought when we had something to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that took us from 5 offices to 16 offices.
Holy cow.
And about 260 agents. We sell all around DC and Baltimore. We don't sell inside the city, inside DC, the district. We are licensed there, but we're in 5 states, brick and mortar. We service 6 states plus DC, so 7 jurisdictions.
Holy cow.
It's insane.
How many MLSs is that?
We're in five 5 or 6, depending on how you break them up. Because one of them, it's 2 MLSs, but they're managed by the same people.
Okay.
So whatever. So it's a ridiculous amount.
And this is an independent brokerage. What's the name of the brokerage?
It's Coldwell Banker Premier. So
Okay.
we are in the top 25 in the country for Coldwell Banker affiliates.
Okay, awesome.
So we are when we got into the Real Trends 500 for the first time this year. So that was super exciting. It's always fun when you see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, it pays off.
We worked really hard to grow. It was painful at times. But when we found out we were in the 500, we didn't even look. Like, I didn't think we had a chance. And all of a sudden we get an email saying, "Oh,
you made it."
I'm like, what? That's insane.
Yeah, that's cool. So how many transactions in 23 last year?
We did just shy of 1,700 transactions. We're in the smaller markets. So I have offices that have a sub 200,000 average sales price. Mm-hmm. So we're not selling $700,000-$800,000 houses in Northern Virginia. We're selling $300,000 houses, which in the Midwest seems reasonable. Over in the Mid-Atlantic, it's like, oh, 200,000. That's super cheap. But what's funny is those smaller markets are actually more valuable to us as a brokerage. So we see more value in pushing out into the rural markets and getting those more traditional companies than we do going into the big cities with heavy competition. So it's worked out well for us.
One of the big ways we connected, we were actually on the same panel together last year at the gathering, and Stephen was the one interviewing myself and the president of ERS, Renee, and we talked all about how to increase profit, build wealth, and create freedom in real estate. And Stephen, you have a great track record of not only helping others merge and be acquired, but also in building out the ancillary. So let's talk about, from a brokerage standpoint, and those big teams listening and broker owners listening, both Stephen and I agree, to survive today, you have to have multipliers. It can't just be based on commission dollar or desk fees, so to speak. Talk a little bit about, if you can, or what you can speak to in terms of, out of these 5 or 6 states that you're operating in, what kind of ancillary businesses are running parallel to the real estate transaction?
So we have an owned mortgage company and a title JV with our owned title company, but we've partnered with a larger one that spans all the states, so we don't have to deal with all the licensing. And of course, we have home warranty relationships, things like that.
Like strategic partnership, not ownership?
Correct. Yes, that is correct. We have not broken into the insurance realm yet. It's something that we would love to do. We just haven't found the right launch mechanism for it. Sure. But I do think property and casualty insurance is a definite must. I mean, everybody needs it if you're buying a house, so why not couple it with your other services?
100%. It's funny, forever on the podcast, I always talked about the top 5 ways to drive revenue when they were MSAs. Now they're called strategic partnerships. Always was mortgage, title, insurance, home inspection, home warranty. The reason for that, out of the 60 different companies that touch a transaction, those are the 5 that make the most revenue. So of course it makes sense to either have a strategic partnership or, more importantly, ownership through joint ventures or curating your own verticals. And you guys have done a really good job in that realm. Where are some other areas where you drive significant profit that's worth mentioning on the podcast outside of those verticals?
So we broke out a company lead gen program. So I created it about 3.5 years ago. We manage a team within our company of lead gen agents, and that has been profitable every year, sometimes by just a tiny bit, and sometimes it does really well. We invest very heavily into that. So I don't want people thinking we're just, rolling in buckets of cash, because lead gen is expensive, as I'm sure every team leader will tell you, every broker will tell you. Paying for leads is very expensive. So we reinvest a lot of that.
Because everyone's going to want to know, how many agents are working the leads, and where have you found the best sources for lead gen today as we record in May of 2024?
So we have 32 agents on that internal team, and that covers any of our basically non-relocation partners. So any of our corporate affinity stuff runs through our reload team, which we're a top 25 in the country for relocation as well. But our best conversion, honestly, is as a product where the lead is really meant for more like wholesalers and investors. But it's a seller platform looking to get an offer on their house. Like, hey, I want to sell my house quickly. what will you give me? We can reach out to them as an agent and a lot of times convert them into a listing because we can show them, well, you're going to make more money selling your house on the market than getting a wholesaler to give you.
So it's kind of like a guaranteed offer platform.
Yeah, that's what they're thinking it is. I mean, that's what they're submitting, thinking that's what they're getting. And then our agents, or we call them and like, you're leaving money on the table if you just sell out to this investor, unless you have a reason that you need to do that.
Right.
Why don't we just list it? You're probably only going to wait a couple extra weeks and we'll have an offer.
Right.
So that's been a really good converter. I think a missed opportunity for a lot of agents is still expireds, for sale by owners, all that stuff.
Old school, baby. Let's go.
Absolutely.
We're back in full circle.
As my broker likes to say, he's like, but these are people that have literally stuck a sign in their yard saying, I want to sell my house. You can't get any more motivated than those people.
Yep. 100% agreed. Yep. So one of the things that we were able to go to the public with this year in 2024 as Elite Real Estate Systems, our new branding, we have the entire foundation created. We beta tested all of 2023 in 13 states. We have mortgage, title, insurance, property management, investment services, and a lead gen platform, and can partner with real estate teams and brokerages across the country for $3,000 a month. We generate 500 leads a month. So we love to have a team of 5 to 10 agents. I think 30 is perfect because then you can have a lead day once a month and give those agents one whole month to call 10 times, text twice, set up emails, set up drip alerts, all of those types of things. For anyone that wants more information about how to partner with us today and instantly be able to have ownership in all the ancillary businesses, legally be able to be compensated and have additional streams of revenue. So you're not only increasing profit, but you're also building your wealth. Reach out to us on EliteRealEstateSystems.com. All the blue buttons will take you to a fill form where you can set up a free demo call. We'd love to bring you into the Elite Real Estate Systems fold. It has nothing to do with a brokerage brand. It has nothing to do with a coaching company. We're agnostic. We're here to support all coaching companies and all brokerage brands to help everyone win together.
Very cool. Again, I forgot to mention property management. We do have an extremely robust property management division. I honestly, for a mid-sized brokerage to not have property management is probably a huge mistake. I know a lot of brokers don't like the liability. We have almost 1,000 doors under management in our different regions, and we've actually won national awards for property management. That revenue stream I cannot overstress enough how much that revenue stream saves us in the off seasons.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of our business comes from vacation rentals over in Delaware. And so that is on a different revenue cycle than real estate sales. Yep. So the money for that comes in when sales are really slow. So it's a great way to sort of normalize your revenue stream throughout the year.
I love it. We've talked about a lot of verticals. The main 6 we talk about at Elite Real Estate Systems, which I know you'll agree with this. The first 3 are the front facing. It's the trading time for money. I'd call it a job. And they have the lowest multiplier. That'd be the real estate transaction. It's a commission tied to a sale. That only happens when you sell a house. You don't keep getting paid off of that experience. Real estate companies today, I'll let Steven speak to this, but teams, you're going to be lucky to get a 1x of gross revenue. Brokerages, maybe a little bit more, but again, you'll talk about this towards the end. Number 2 is going to be the mortgage. Mortgage only happens once. So once you do your mortgage deal, the commission is similar to the real estate commission. And then you have title. Title only happens once. So those we would consider point of sale. And then you have residual revenue. Any business with residual revenue is going to get a greater multiplier. Property and casualty insurance currently sells at a 3 to 5x gross revenue. Property management, 5 to 7x gross revenue. And then you have investment portfolios, which we're really big advocates today on having brokerages put together an LLC and building investment groups. So as Elite, anyone that comes into Elite Real Estate Systems, we're actually building an internal real estate investment trust. So anyone that's an owner of Elite also owns that investment trust, and we're building that real estate portfolio together. So what would you have to say to the 3 point of sale, which is the job, trading time for money, versus the residual revenue when you're looking at your overall valuation and a potential exit down the road?
So I would say on the mortgage side, you do have some opportunity for residual in the refi world. So that's the one nice thing about mortgage is you can touch those people multiple times. I was just at the UWM live conference in Detroit, Pontiac technically, and they said something about if they do a mortgage once, they're going to do a mortgage. And now I've forgotten. It's like 5 or 7 tims in their life. So there are additional touch points, especially in this market. It's that date the rate mentality of refinancing every couple of years. But yeah, I agree. Point of sale, it's title and real estate for sure are one shot. And unless the house is getting sold, you're not really doing them anymore. Title, you could argue that also can be on the refi side.
Sure, of course.
For a brokerage to really build value, you need that residual income and you need that stuff that is more recession proof. Like property management is pretty recession proof.
Yep.
If the real estate market crashes, people are going to rent. If the economy crashes, people still have places to live. So property management, 20 years ago when I got into the business, my first broker told me, she's like, property management has gotten me through more tough times than anything else in my life. My fact that I own these rental properties and I manage for other people is the greatest secret to my success. Yep. She's like, I would have been out of the business years ago if I didn't have the revenue from property management. So I would challenge anyone that complains that it's too big of a liability. Yeah, but if you do it right, it's going to be worth it.
Yep.
It's one that has to be done at scale, though. Managing 10 properties is not going to cut it. It's more work.
Which I'm glad you bring this up because this is what ties us into this merger conversation. We have lots of teams out there. I think I heard a study recently. You'll know this. 80% of brokerages have 10 or less agents. Mm-hmm. So I find that fascinating. 70. Everyone listen, 70% of real estate brokerages have 10 or less agents, which isn't a surprise to me, but it is an interesting number to analyze. 25% of agents are on real estate teams today. And it's amazing. It's fascinating. We launched this podcast 9 years ago. The team building podcast when less than 5% of agents were on teams. And now teams have taken over. We are the reason I think it's driving the industry. I think the future is teams, even at a brokerage, building your own team, which is your indie team model to create more revenue. Mm-hmm. But as you're looking at teams, the challenge for a team and why Elite launched this Powered by Elite platform where they could own ancillary, teams typically don't do enough transactions to be able to own 49.9% of a joint venture. You have to hit economies of scale to own that, and it depends on the industry, but usually it's 500 transactions. So you have to increase sales. So how do you increase sales? You increase agent count, which increases listings, it increases sales. And so there's this like happy medium. So if you're a team, I would argue of less than 10, you're never really going to hit economy of scale. Where do you think the number needs to be if you're a team or a brokerage to really hit scale sufficient to have the ancillaries, to catch momentum, and to grow, to start acquiring other businesses? And then I'll share my opinion.
I mean, I think the basics, if a team is not doing more than $1 million in GCI, 40 million or so in sales volume, you're probably struggling. I mean,
it's a rainmaker model, right? You're only surviving because the person that owns the company is doing over 50% of the business.
There's nothing of value there. Yeah. It is literally the person's name on the sign. That's the only thing driving the business.
So say it all again. It's going to piss everybody off because I'm sure 90% of the audience is going to fit in this category. We don't say it to piss you off. We say it to motivate you and encourage you that there is a solution, and we're going to share the solution today. So where would you need to be at to really catch traction and make it worthwhile?
I think the first rung of the ladder is about 40 million in sales volume. $1 million in GCI is the basic. That's like the baseline. To really, really ramp up, you've got to get into the several million GCI category.
100%.
We've got offices that are smaller than that, which it stinks.
Yeah.
But when, I've got single agents doing more deals than a team in a month, that's pretty sad. Mm-hmm. And I think the other problem with teams is you have to know why you're doing a team. And if you're doing it just for vanity, you're probably not going to survive.
Same thing with brokerage. I can't tell you how many agents have left my company as teams to start brokerages, and they think it's a badge of honor. And I feel so sorry for them. I'm like, I'm so sorry that that's what you chose to do. You made the biggest mistake of your life.
There's a reason they call us brokers, because we're brokers.
There you go. Exactly.
But a team, the problem is if you have, let's say you're doing $1 million in GCI. Okay, great. But if you have 10 people on your team, it averages only about $100,000 a person. Well, we know obviously not everybody's making $100,000 because the team leader better be making a couple $100,000 to make it worth it.
Yep.
So what you really have is a bunch of people just sort of eking a living.
Yep.
They're not really lighting it up. Are you really
club real estate? Club fun.
Yeah.
Lots of teams are like that. They're not businesses. And to your point, you made the comment, I want to highlight it because you only said it once. You have to know what you want when you start it. The truth about life, though, is you continually become more self-aware every day. And so you now might find yourself in this position going, I didn't mean to get here. I just did it because I thought I should be here. But now you can become more cognizant. You're listening to podcasts. Because the difference between all of our listeners and us is the podcast you listen to, the books you read, the people you spend your time around. What do you want to be when you grow up? I think your option is Navy SEAL team, where you're the influencer producer, where you have one listing agent, one buyer agent, one admin, or you become a rock star team, CEO elite team, where you have 25 agents or 30 agents. To your point, I think that's where you need to be at to do 3.5 to 4 million GCI. And just so everyone knows, businesses typically only net about 15 to 20%. Real estate teams, brokerages only net, if they're lucky, 3 to 7%. Gary Keller shared last year at the gathering, I think he said out of all 800 market centers in the US, the average market center was keeping 7. I think there's outliers there. I actually think they'd be lucky if they were even profitable. And you look at the top 10 real estate franchises in America, they all showed negative numbers in 2023. So none of this is to be doomy gloomy. The answer is the teamridge model. You have to be a brokerage that runs like a team, in my opinion. And of course, you have a place for the dependent agent on a team, interdependent agent who's individual at the brokerage with some value adds, and then an independent model where someone can be on an island. But you should solve all those problems as a team leader and as a broker owner, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point, I think a brokerage could look at a team model and learn something. We're taking components of that ourselves, like we have our internal lead gen team, but we're looking at it from a brokerage standpoint. Like, okay, let's pretend that we're the team leader. What are we doing as a business to generate more revenue? Mm-hmm. Instead of just buying leads, like, what are we doing to tie people to the company and getting the business from the company instead of the agents are out there sourcing all the business? Because if the agents are out there getting all the business themselves, what do they need the brokerage for? That's always the question.
The
and
agent's
that's why
asking,
you have these 100% models, because the agent's like, hey, I source all my own business. I don't need you. That might be true. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like everybody should have a split. But the brokerage, if you structure correctly, the support you provide should more than
100%. Well, and when I talked about earlier about the dependent, interdependent, independent, each of those has a different value prop and a different commission split.
Right. Exactly. But a brokerage should be looking at their model and start questioning, what is it that we can do to drive more business like a team leader would do?
Yep.
If I wake up every morning and I put on my team leader hat, I got to make it rain. Yep. Like, that's my job. Like, that is literally the thing I have to do. When my boss was actually selling real estate, he said I had one goal every day when I woke up, and that was, or when I started the week, was to get a saleable listing. That was my whole goal for the week. If I did it on Monday, I could technically take the week off. Now his thing is every day he wants to get a listing and find out how to get more agents in the company. Those are his two goals. He thinks like a team leader in that respect.
Love it.
So you should have a very singular goal in mind when you're doing, looking at your team. One of those goals could be to either acquire or to sell your business. If that is the case, then, there's some things you need to start, looking at. And I say it should be a goal because, at some point you're either going to get big enough to where you can start absorbing other smaller brokerages or smaller teams, or you reach a point where you're like, I want to live my life a little bit and maybe go off and, buy a house in Costa Rica or something, or somewhere in between.
Yep. Stephen, let me share this quick, because this is something that was fascinating you and I talked about, and I just kind of forgot this, but there's a lot of pride around selling something. You built this, it's your baby. You don't want to tell everyone you sold it. The person acquiring you doesn't want you telling people you sold it. And so a lot of times the vocabulary, the semantics are that it was a merger. Two companies came together, but anytime you see a merger, those companies that came together were really ones getting acquired by the other. Someone has usurped the leadership position. They bought the other company out. But the second thing that's fascinating to me on that merger, if you're scared about telling everyone you sold, most of these deals aren't acquired by spending money up front or going and getting a big bank loan. It's usually based on revenue that's already coming in over a 5-year period. So they want, when I merge, let's say I were to acquire your brokerage of 500 agents, I want Steve in there. I want the owner there. I want all of the key players to stick around for a little bit of time, because I don't want everyone to leave, because of course I can't control where all the subcontractor agents choose to go. I want them to stick around and see that there's value in the acquisition. So share, I guess, with the audience as we think about maybe selling or acquiring, what steps should we start taking? And then of course, I would love you to make your contact information available if anyone has follow-up questions afterwards. I think Stephen, I know you've done this hundreds of times and have helped, coach a lot of people through this process, and you have a very minimal fee for that process, which
I like to think that I'm competitive,
You're definitely competitive. And I think what I think is cool, and one of the things that made me want to reach out to you was to know what's your valuation. Like, you can reach out to Steve and just be like, dude, what do you think someone would acquire me for today? And then you could start shopping in your local market. I think your number one competitor is your number one potential buyer. Absolutely. You go to your competitor and say, hey, here's the deal. I'm kind of tired of this. I want to go golf. I want to relax. I want to have fun. And I'll stay on at your brokerage for 5 years and I'll sell again. Like, to anyone listening to this that has gone into the elite role, there are a lot of days, I'll be honest, as the host of the show, there's a lot of days I think, gosh, why did I take all this on? I could be making $2 million a year with my little Navy SEAL team and life would be great. And I'm sipping a pina colada and I don't have to think about all the scale and growth and all these things. And that's not giving up. You had your run, you have someone acquire you, and it's a win that way. Or you do the opposite. You're ready to build. You want to go to 500 agents and you acquire. So maybe talk about what those deal structures look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the first thing, we'll tackle the buyer side first. So if you're thinking about acquiring, and to your point, yes, anytime I personally say the word merger, I mean an acquisition, but people don't like that word. Someone wants to ask me, I thought you bought companies, or I thought you acquired. I'm like, or they said, you said merger, but I thought you acquired. I said, we're merging through acquisition. The two companies are merging together, but we have purchased all the assets of the company. So we acquired it, but on the surface, the company is merging. A true merger would be where the selling company still maintains some sort of an ownership or gets ownership in the giant, conglomerate or something. Mm-hmm. We don't do it that way. Our company does not do mergers in that way. We do straight asset purchases. I think that's the cleanest way of doing them. And remember, you're going to be married to these people for years. So I wouldn't enter into talks with anybody that you don't personally like or can't stand to be around for any length of time, because it will make your life miserable. Trust me. So personality is important, but as a buyer, I think the first thing you need to figure out is what are you trying to accomplish? Is this a geographic expansion? Is this market share grab? Like, what am I doing here? Am I buying someone local and rolling them in? Am I going to another market and dropping a pin so I can expand my reach? And then once you know that, it's just a matter of shopping. You go out hunting, you get the data. Brokermetrics is a fantastic tool for that. Your MLS. And you just start having conversations. They're not always easy. And the more localized you are, the harder the conversations are to have, because they don't want to tell you. Nobody wants to tell their competitor, yeah, I'm looking for an exit strategy. Because an unscrupulous company would use that against them and try to poach their agents.
Yep. Let me throw an idea out, because I've been in these shoes in the last 12 months. I've had people approach me. You can show up and pretend, if you're a buyer, you can pretend like you want to sell, and it can be a strategy to actually then open up the dialogue around acquisition. And you can do the reverse. You can say you want to buy, even though your end goal is to sell. So to just think about the way you show up, and you'll do this for them, right? If they're not wanting to make those introductions, you could say, hey, we have a company. I'm not going to say who it is yet. And are you interested in buying or selling?
Yeah. So I do so I have a consulting company on the side, C3 Dynamic Solutions. And it was kind of born out of my desire to just move brokerages forward. I love helping brokerages. Of course, I also like getting paid for it now. So I decided to make a little bit of a side hustle on it. Yep. But yeah, part of what we do is we can do buyer and seller farming. Basically, I've done both. I've sent letters are shockingly effective, especially if you hand address them. I've represented sellers and sent out letters in the local market saying I'm representing a company that wants to discuss a succession plan, and people raise their hands, say I would be interested. We sign NDAs and then we have talks. Reverse, I'm representing a company or companies who are looking to expand into your market. Would you be interested in having talks? And from there, you just sort of figure out if it's a good fit or not. What I can't stand, and don't ever do this, anybody that's listening, if a consultant or anybody calls you and asks you about selling your company, don't start off with, well, how much are you paying me? It's impossible to know that. Like that is not how this works. It's like a seller, you asking a seller, oh, hey, I'm going to list your house.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, that's fine. Just pick a number. It's fine. I don't care.
Right.
No, you're going to discuss the value,
right.
So from a buyer perspective, it's more about personal motivation. But I also do what's called a readiness assessment. So I do a buyer readiness and seller readiness assessment, different packages going through different aspects. The buyer side is really looking at you. It's more of an introspective look at, do you have money? If you're basically running paycheck to paycheck, an acquisition's probably not the safest bet because they're not necessarily cash heavy up front. They don't have to be, but you're going to have to spend some money.
Yeah. You're buying points. There's going to be some costs. You need to cover overhead, et cetera.
Absolutely. So do you have money? Do you have systems in place that, will support the infrastructure? We just literally brought on 30 agents.
Yeah.
How do we onboard them?
Right.
I don't know. We don't have a process. You're going to screw it up and those agents are going to leave. So you kind of have to massage those things along before you enter into the fray.
Yep.
It's like getting your car ready for the race,
So if someone's wanting to go down this rabbit hole and is interested, and you've lasted this long on the podcast, which we're 30 minutes in.
Oh, wow. We talk too much.
No, this has been awesome. Dude, this is gold and no one's talking about it. I don't know why. This is the best time to be talking about it. There's so many opportunities right now to acquire and to disposition. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. It's okay if you have to sell and merge the companies. There's so many opportunities. And I think, Stephen, you're a great resource for this. I think people are sticker shock. Like they're scared. They think it's going to cost 20 grand. It's nothing like that. Like if someone wanted to have a call with you for 30 minutes just to find out like what their opportunity looked like in their marketplace, what's the cost of that?
So I do free consultation calls. So I will do a 30-minute free call. I probably will have to change that at some point.
He's like, and 50 calls in 30 days. Here we go.
But currently I don't.
Can I schedule a call with you, Stephen? I need a 30-minute call with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the assessments, range from 25 on 2250 for elite members, up to 2750 for elite members, or 3000 for retail.
And this is $3,000, you guys, for him to go under the hood, look at all the numbers, analyze your business. He has tons of experience in this space, and at least share with you what he believes it could sell for. And then also to do an analysis of a company you're going to potentially acquire. And I know the market rate. I've been through several valuations the last 12 months. That is the most competitive I've seen in the marketplace. So that's one of the main reasons I wanted to bring Stephen on, is I know my audience doesn't want to go spend $20,000 on an analysis. Stephen's going to be a great option for that.
Yeah. And I'll just say this really quickly, because I know we're short on time. You don't necessarily need a valuation if you're a seller and you're thinking about entering the market. Yes, a valuation is great, but it's just like in real estate. It's worth what a buyer is willing and able to pay.
Yep.
So what I provide is, think of it like a market analysis versus an appraisal. So if I'm the buyer, in my experience, these are the factors I've looked at. This is how much I would be offering. And I actually walk the sellers through a mock negotiation, a mock letter of intent based on their numbers, actual numbers, normalized P&Ls, everything. And I said, if I was buying your company, this is the range of value that I would have signed. A lot of sellers would be like, oh, that's a lot less than I was expecting. And I had a friend ask, he's like, so you're going to tell a seller that their business could potentially be worth less than they were thinking? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, why would they want to hire you to be on their side? I said, because if they don't, I'm negotiating against them. I'm on the buyer side now. And of course I'm going to, I saved a company $300,000 on a negotiation. So you just have to look at these things honestly.
Will you please for those just listening, in Stephen's office, there's a giant Godfather poster behind him. So I just hope in the midst of these negotiations, if you're representing me, you'll be in this room and you'll have your Zoom up and you'll zoom in on the Godfather. And if they don't listen to you, they know how things are going to end up with horse heads in their beds. Well, Stephen,
make them an offer they can't refuse.
Exactly. Well, this has been awesome, dude. So much value. I love episodes like this. It's a unique conversation. It shouldn't be unique. Everybody should be having these conversations, because it's not a question of if there's an exit, there will be an exit. One day you will exit your business. The question is, will you get anything for it? And have you prepared to exit so that you can pass it to your family or sell it to someone else and actually be able to drive the most amount of revenue out of that experience? It's all about our vision statement of Elite Real Estate Systems, increasing profit, building wealth, creating the freedom that we all want to enjoy. Again, if you have enjoyed this episode or any future episodes, please go out, give us a 5-star rating on the platform you listen to, and give a shout out to the guests. We love it. If you're on Apple and you go out and give us the 5-star, let Steven know this was awesome and valuable. Reach out to Steven. I don't think you've shared your credentials yet. What's the best way for someone to contact you?
So I'll share my, I'll do my email.
Okay. You'll be okay.
Thousands of viewers.
You'll be okay. Email safe.
I might get inundated. So just use consulting at C3. So the letter C, the number 3, dynamicsolutions.com. That will come to me. I'm very easy to reach. And I'm always happy to have chats. And you can book consulting calls it's calendly.com/Stephen Meadows, Stevens with a PH. Look me up, c3dynamicsolutions.com. I also have a YouTube channel called The Merger Maven. So I try to put some good content out on that as well.
Cool. Great resources. We'll definitely include that in the show notes as well. Also, after someone has had a successful merger, I'll actually offer this. The first person that uses Steven and has a successful acquisition or disposition or quote unquote, air quotes, merger, we would love to bring Steven back on with that client of yours to talk about the experience. I'd like to take our show, this team building podcast. I want to get more into the nuts and bolts of businesses that go through this. And I want to talk more about value and exit and planning ahead. No one's talking. Everyone talks about listing houses or lead gen. Like, we're so exhausted. Anyone that's a leader is so tired of those conversations. We all know what we should be doing. Why are we doing it? What direction are we going? Where are we going? How do we maximize profitability? Those are the reasons people are coming to my show versus all the other shows that are out there. And it's all about rising together. And so we're so appreciative of our audience, you guys. We're the biggest we've ever been. We're averaging like 25 to 30,000 downloads a month. We'd never be here without the listeners like yourselves who've come on today to listen to this episode. So I hope you're enjoying this content. So please, if you have an interest in this, reach out to Steven, and I will offer that right now. The first client, Steven, you make sure you track it. You're coming on the Team Building Podcast if you want to. You don't have to give specifics. Like, don't be worried we're going to expose something, but I think it'd be a fun way to analyze the deal and now have context like 2, 3, 6 months later. Actually serving one of our listenership would be awesome. So thank you again. This was a great episode. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today and share your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me.